Craig White, welcome to the Pacey Performance Podcast. Pleasure to have you.
Rob, it's a pleasure to meet you, mate. I've heard a lot about you. I've seen your podcast for years, and like I said in the beginning, I thought you was this American guy, and you're a guy that just lives up the road from me. So I am. Like kindred spirits meeting.
Absolutely, closer than we thought. Anyone who doesn't know who you are, Craig, would you mind just giving us a bit of a background, because it's an interesting one, from background you and finishing with what you do now?
Yeah, I mean, my title changes all the time. I'm a high performance consultant. I'm a coach mentor. I'm a leadership coach, and I'm known mostly for my work in professional rugby, although I've worked in professional soccer as well. So, like, I've worked in high performance rugby now for about 27 years, and I've worked for national teams. I've worked for Ireland, Wales, the British and Irish Lions. I've worked for London Wasps, Leicester Tigers, and I've worked as a consultant for World Rugby for about close to 12, 13 years now, and that's took me all over the world, working on the Sevens circuit with women, with men, and but most notably, I guess I'm mostly proud of my work with Georgia over the years, with Uruguay, and more recently with Chile, helping them to qualify for the World Cup. So that's half of me, Rob. I'm kind of this high performance coach in rugby, and over that time I've evolved from an Snc coach that was really, really passionate about Snc to someone that's really passionate about the holistic nature of performance, outer performance, inner performance. And more recently, in recent years, I'm really fascinated with culture and how teams can grow culture and grow this kind of sense of brotherhood. And following on from that concept of brotherhood, actually, the other half of what I do is I run an organization called Men Without Masks. And we are a service for men. We run men's retreats. We run online programs for men. And we do private coaching services for men. And we attract men from all walks of life, sportsmen, high performers, men with trauma, men that just want to fulfill the potential. So I have this mission really around helping men to become, I guess, more unique leaders, to find their uniqueness and fulfill the potential in this lifetime.
So you mentioned that you started off as what we'd class as a traditional Snc coach.
Yeah, I was one of the first actually in professional rugby.
Yeah. So has it been a transition just over time, moving into this more leadership space? Was it a particular job that threw you into that kind of role, which meant you had to learn on the spot, or what was the transition like?
Two things really, Rob. One thing now, what I know now about kind of how drivers and values evolve within us, I just exhausted Snc. I was just such an avid learner for years and years and years. I interned all over the world and went to visit teams all over the world, and went to Westside, trained with Ian Dana that used to train Mike Tyson, went with Charlie Francis, lived with Charlie Francis for 2 weeks, and more people, and I was just fascinated, and it's almost as if I filled that void so much that I needed another challenge. So I tend to be an intense guy, and I love learning. So once I've filled a void, I'll look for something else. So there's this natural transition of wanting to be challenged that's led me to kind of change my roles and my passion over the years, I guess. But also, I've also been on this journey of self-discovery as well. It's almost as if it was all about learning here and success here. And over the years, it's come inwards. And now I define a lot of my success and a lot of my embodied learning by, what I've kind of learned on the inside. And that the catalyst for that, Rob, was I went on a yoga retreat about 14 years ago, and I wasn't into yoga. I mean, I've since become a yoga teacher, meditation teacher, and many other things, but I wasn't into yoga at all. And I was forced to go by my ex-wife, and it turned my life around, upside down actually, but in a good way. And my values changed so much in that month because it was so intense, and I learned so much about myself on the inside through trying to stay quiet and breathe and meditate, that when I went back, things just didn't make sense anymore. There was an internal calibration going on around what was important and what wasn't important. and I didn't have clarity. So whenever we moved through a threshold or a new passage in life, it's often preceded with confusion. So I was confused and I was angry. I didn't know what was going on. And to cut a long story short, after a year back home after that yoga retreat, I was working for the Welsh rugby team as the performance director. I just left and I headed off to Thailand, and I went on this crazy journey of self-discovery and learning new skills, leadership skills, NLP, psychology, shadow work, yoga, meditation, all weird and wonderful things. And also learned a lot about myself working with coaches and therapists. And for a while, Rob, there was a separation in me. I'll admit it. It was like, on one hand, I was this kind of rugby guy dipping in and out. And on the other hand, I was this yoga guy, and it was kind of a split. And it's only in recent years where it's unified inside of me, and I'm at peace with myself. And now I'm kind of working back in rugby and loving it more than ever before, as well as all the other stuff. There was a while on my self-discovery journey where, I'll be honest with you, I didn't actually like rugby. I was kind of doing it for the money, working for World Rugby. But once I redefined why I did it, and now it's all the same, I'm just working with men and helping them to fulfill the potential. I can create safety in the rugby space because people know me, and I can affect change because of that. So I'm at peace now with both sides of my job.
How have you, because I can imagine going through that kind of journey, it could have gone another way where you could have left it behind and kind of never to return again. You said you fell out of love with it. How did you kind of bring it together and clearly make a massive success of this transition and the ability to bring it together and, like you say, be at peace with what it looks like now?
Well, there was a time, unconsciously, I was in a bit of pain. Stuff was coming up from the past. I was angry as fuck, and I didn't realize that at the time. But like there was a time, and actually, out of this pain and out of this, I'm not working in rugby ever again, came Men Without Masks. So Men Without Masks was born because I didn't want to work in rugby, and I thought, wow, I'm done with rugby. I'll create something that's still with men because I'm good in that space. I still want to use everything I've learned and pull it into the space, but I'm done with rugby. And I kept going back again and kept going back again. All I can say to you, Rob, it whether this sounds esoteric or not, it was like there was a pull, there was a tug inside saying, hey mate, this is still part of your mission on this earth. This is still part of your DNA. So I went back in, and I had to redefine, because I'll be honest with you, I couldn't work now for an England or a Wales or an Ireland or Scotland because my hands would be tied. There'd be too many X and O's, and people that know me, they know I'm not like that anymore. My work in rugby now, a lot of it is in South America, and it's with countries like Uruguay and Chile. And because I'm respected and I've got trust with the leaders in those environments, it's a blank canvas, Rob. I can go in and do what I want, and nobody's telling me what to do. And I can also experiment. Some of the things that I'm doing now with rugby teams, I would never get the chance to do with an England in the confines of a Six Nations with all those different specialists around. And so, and I don't want to be a slave to rugby again. So World Rugby gives me a doorway to in and out approach without the day-to-day kind of stresses of it. So it's a win-win, really.
Can you give us an examples of the things that you are able to do in South America that you won't necessarily be able to do in England?
I'll give you an example of what I did with Chile recently. So I've worked with Chile on and off for a few years since the head coach, Pablo Lemoine, got the job, because he knew me from when he used to coach Uruguay. And I've been over there a couple of times, but then because of COVID, I've just been kind of Zooming them and supporting them on Zoom. But he got me over for a full month before they played USA in 2-game qualification for the World Cup. And I mean, he basically said to me, Luke, I want you to work with our culture, this brotherhood, trust, open communication, deeper connection. And I really want us to deepen our why. So he gave me the mission, and I was kind of, wow, come on, what can we do? So, I mean, I did a number of different, and you can see some of the stuff on LinkedIn recently. I posted, a number of different sessions with me. There was only me and the players. We must have done about 8 sessions over a month. And And we were talking about the past, and we were talking about gratitude, and we were talking about mentors that influenced us, and we were talking about pain of the past, pleasure of the past. So there was a piece around the past, Rob, which in my philosophy, if you like, is a cog of deepening purpose. And then there was other periods where we'd focus on the present, and I'd teach them grounding practices, how to come into the present moment, how to get out of the head, how to cultivate presence and embodied groundedness. And some people might call that coherence or presence, or single pointed focus. It's all the same thing. But and then we projected the story of how they wanted to perform against the USA. So this is the future piece. Who are you now? Where do you want to go? How do you want to get there? How do you want to perform in the game? What's your mission? That we even did a session, Rob, which is so good, so good, where I gave the players a task, and they had the weekend to prepare a presentation, every one of them, and they had to prepare who the character is going to be, like an alter ego, who the character was, what the mission was going to be against the USA, and the commitment to the team over the last 10 days of the campaign. And it was so good. It was so good. They put so much into it. There's so much charisma, so much expression, and there was so much trust after it, and honoring of each other. So, I mean, that's a whirlwind kind of tour of some of the work I did. But in terms of deepening that why, and some of this isn't influenced by Owen Eastwood, is, there's a piece of work to do to deepen awareness of the past. There's a piece of work to do to deepen awareness of the present moment, grounded presence, and where a team are now, or an individual. And there's a piece of work to do around the future, and the energy of that. And when I say energy, the embodied energy of that, because to cultivate all that, you've got to go inwards. It's not something you can read in a book, and it's unique to each individual. The energy of that is what I call, it's like purpose petrol. It's much more than passion. Passion is useless without purpose. And on outside of that, I had some wonderful conversations with the captain, deep conversations with the captain. Players were trusting in me. They were opening up. And sometimes it was just a matter of being in a state of embodied presence. So they felt heard. They could offload the fears. And then behind that space is presence. Fear is an interesting energy, and if it gets too much, for sure it affects performance. And sometimes players, I even recommend to teams and individuals that if there's too much fear in the dressing room before kickoff, they have to voice it to someone. Otherwise, they carry it on the pitch, and it affects the tissues and it affects the physiology. So, going off on a tangent there, but I'm just, as you can see, I'm just excited by what's possible without the book, because sometimes I don't even look into books for these things. I just kind of conjure them up and try them and see if they work.
Yeah. So in terms of the consultants that you do, say South America, for example, so are you putting in place like an SNC team or like a high performance team, or are you coming in
it depends, Rob.
Okay.
It depends. It used to be that way, Rob, because the tier 2 didn't used to be so far behind the tier 1. So years ago, I'd go in there, I'd do like a 64-page report, tell them everything that they needed to do over a 4-year cycle, and then we'd put all the pieces in place. But thankfully, most of them are in a decent position now. They've got the foundational basics right, and it depends on the environment. And it depends on the needs. Like, one of the things I didn't know I was going to be doing in Chile for the recent month, outside of my cultural work, was I ended up effectively being the rehab coach.
Okay. Because
they'd made the head physio, the manager, who was doing a great job, they hadn't replaced him. So they were pulling in part-time physios, and there was a hole there, a huge hole, and 3 of the best players were injured. So I had to step in. And in other environments, like Georgia, for example, I'm pretty hands-off because I've known them for years. They're doing a great job. And it's just kind of, just asking good questions and individual conversations. So it's more of a mentoring role. And in Uruguay, it'll be who I'm working with again before the World Cup next year, and Chile, with Uruguay, because I know them so well. I've been in and out for years. when I go in next time, it'll be a combination of mentoring, but actually getting my hands dirty and being an Snc coach in the gym. So it depends. But the mental piece, the cultural piece, the brotherhood piece, it's always been in me, Rob. Even when I was an Snc coach, when I used to work at London Wasps and we had some golden years, we did kind of do things differently. And my philosophy, I didn't really know it until I looked into this stuff. My philosophy as an Snc coach was always, I don't prescribe based on a physiological outcome of what I want. I'll prescribe a physiological session with a projected outcome of brotherhood, cultivating trust, cultivating self-belief. So I guess at the time, that's what separated me from a lot of the other Snc coaches in the other clubs that were doing the traditional stuff, the 800s, the 400s, the 200s, the sprints, the linear stuff. So yeah, for me, it was always about this kind of brotherhood. So in my Snc days, I always used, it might sound strange to some people, I always used a lot of activities that involved touch, for example, and close connection. And, you know, because it's an element of building trust. So we compete with each other a lot. Back in the day, we did a lot of combat work and all the other teams were running. Of course, the game's changed now, but, back in the early days of professionalism, when teams were all kind of relatively running fit, we gained an edge from the combat area. So yeah, but I always prescribe based on this kind of cultural development of the team.
So with your journey that we've just gone through, if you're employing or bringing a traditional Snc coach in, how has your journey affected what you would actually look for in that kind of professional coming on board?
Yeah. Well, it has to affect it, doesn't it, Robert? It's a great question, that, actually. It's a great question because in the world of Snc, there's all these arguments around the best practice. But at the end of the day, if you're an Snc coach and you're from an athletic background, athletics is the most important thing in the whole world. If you're from a wrestling background, so is wrestling, a judo. So there's always that bias. We can't get away from that because it's where we're comfortable. It's our superpower. It's the zone of efficiency for us. So if I'm looking for a coach now to work in one of my teams, I guess, I'm obviously unconsciously looking at it through my own filters of my qualities. But I thought you would ask this question, and I made a few notes earlier. I definitely look for courage, and my definition of courage is someone that is prepared to lean into their edge, not take the easy option. I know a lot of Snc coaches, they'll read forever about strength and power, forever and ever and ever, because it's the comfort zone. It's not actually the zone of development. So I want someone that is really kind of courageous, willing to think outside the box, an infectious learner. They have to be a role model. That's my bias. It's not always necessary, but I think they have to be a role model. And what I mean by that is, I don't mean in the sense of looking like a CrossFit athlete. I mean in terms of do as I do. So I had a philosophy, and I always have a philosophy, is I'll never ask you to do something if I've not tried it myself. So that's important for me. Another key component that I wrote down is, I think I was good at this without knowing, someone that fucks up but mops up quickly, because that is a key component of trust. I don't know if you've ever realized this, Rob. When you make a mistake in an environment, even if it's the worst mistake in the world, if you quickly hold your hand up and state what you did wrong and how you're going to fix it, whoever you kind of disappointed, they end up trusting you more. That's my experience of it. So it's a real component of building trust in teams. Trust will break down in individual fractured kind of areas, and provided that you can fix things soon and repair, which is a word me and my partner have recently come up with. We fracture and we're getting good at repair, then the relationship gets deeper and deeper and deeper. So I look for someone who fixes his mistakes quickly. I want someone that's upfront and not afraid to speak up. I want someone that cares about people and not selfish. So who really, really cares about people. And the last one is, I like uniqueness, Rob. not necessarily quirkiness, but someone that is unique, and they celebrate their uniqueness. They don't try to be someone that they're not. Whether that is someone that's a joker or someone that's really stoic, it doesn't really matter, provided that they see their uniqueness as a talent to be expressed, and they express it without giving a shit what people think of them.
Can you give us an examples of where, you have to mention names, but people you've come across? I really like that last one. And I'm putting myself in the position of someone that's hiring, and within Snc or within any other industry, you're going to get a lot of people who are not clones, but they've gone through the same education, same background. They've all into the same things, the strength and power. They've all read super training 15 times. But then you get the one person who mad into Lego, like just, whatever, only because I'm mad into Lego, but someone who's just that little bit different, or instead of getting that second internship, went traveling for a year. And you're like, okay, you've got something that I've not seen before. Any examples of that?
It's fun. It's fun. It's good. You say that's what I look for on a CV. I don't look at the accreditations. I look at the experience. The obvious person to speak about is Paul Stridgen, who works for Wales. Who I used to write Paul's programs for him when he was a wrestler, when he was 12. And he is a mate of mine. He's not talking to me at the moment, but that's another story. But yeah, Paul is the obvious one. His character's infectious. He's funny. He does weird and wonderful things. He's not your conventional Snc looking athletic coach. His weight's up and down. He has quirky habits, but his capacity to cultivate a deep sense of safety and support the players like a father, but challenge them also like a father. It's unparalleled. I've never seen it before. It's amazing. He can be the joker, and he can also be the commander.
So, you've listed things there that you'd look for in a coach.
Yeah.
Nothing technical.
No, because for me, that's a non-negotiable.
A given.
It's a non-negotiable. If you're an Snc coach and you can't lift, and you can't demonstrate the drills better than the players, you've got a problem. Now that's obviously biased because I was quite technically good, so I'm biased. Not everybody's like that, but I would. If I employed someone and he wasn't technically good, I just give him 6 months to come up to scratch.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. What I'd like to move on to now is mentors and mentorships, because you go on social media and not everyone, but there's a lot more than there was 2-3 years ago. People offering online mentorships, in-person mentorships, one-on-one, group. It seems to be everywhere. And I sent you a little clip that I'd also put on social media, which was Stephen Bartlett talking about mentors and maybe the younger generation, maybe people coming through university, early to mid-20s. His perception was that these people look to a mentor and go, I want this one magical person who's going to pull me through and help me along the way. Where actually, there's the internet. Like, you can have Craig can be our mentor because I can follow him on LinkedIn and read all his writings, or you could go, on Twitter and follow someone else and go visit someone. You can have all these different people around. It's not just one magical person. And we had a little bit of chat about this offline, but I'd love to get your take on what actually a mentor is, what people should expect, and is a mentor right for everyone?
I can talk about it, Rob, and then towards the end of it, I'll tell you how I mentor. There's polarity in everything, isn't that? We're talking about mentors now. There's polarity in every single aspect of life. Instagram, mentors on Instagram, I'm sure some of them are brilliant, and I'm sure some of them will make you worse. So it obviously can be a dangerous field without awareness. I've had mentors, but often for me, it's never like been one person. I did an exercise once, and the exercise was do an inventory of all the different mentors in your life. And when I went back, there wasn't one perfect mentor, and funnily enough, all my mentors have been PE teachers and rugby coaches. But what I did in the inventory was I wrote down all the positive qualities of each mentor, not the negative ones, just all the positives. And I looked at the kind of pot and I thought, wow, fucking hell, that is amazing mentorship. Even if some of these guys messed up or they had shit areas of the life that they were divorced, you know, I took a piece of gold from all these different men and it's in me, and it's like, wow, there's so much gratitude for that. I have also used mentors as well. You know, I meant, you know, Paula Quinn was a mentor, Charlie Francis was a mentor, Louis Simmons was a mentor, Ian Denny was a mentor, Warren Gatlin was a mentor. Elements of my mum have been mentoring. So in relation to, I guess, the logistics of mentoring, it doesn't have to be one person. What I do with my clients at the moment, Rob, is, especially if you can afford it, is, you know, I'll act as the mentor, but I'll say, look, you have to put yourself in the middle of this circle as an enterprise, and one person isn't enough. You know, you might need access to a therapist. You might need access to a relationship coach. You know, you might need access to a health coach, and try and build this support around the client so that it's like the client is the enterprise. So I think that for head coaches and high performing coaches, I think that's smart. So in summary, I don't think a mentor needs to be one person. You know, you can pick things up from different people, pieces of wisdom. You can have more than one person. I also think it's wrong to have the same person the whole time. If you've really been with a mentor and absorbed the guidance from that mentor, you should get to a point where you don't need the mentor and you move on to a different mentor. And finally, before I go on to how I do it, you know, the mentor doesn't have to be a human being. You know, you can be mentored by elements of religion that you bring into your role, spirituality, books, podcasts, you know, people on the street, your father, your mom, you know, people that inflicted pain on you. You know, there's different ways to look at mentorship and how you've grown as a result of that experience. So, I mean, mentorship is about growth, and there's so many different herbs and spices within that kind of pot, if you like. Now, the way I approach mentorship, Rob, is if you go on a mentorship journey with me, it's about you. I have loads of research sources that I share, but I'll never follow or tell you to follow a particular paradigm, process, philosophy, and methodology. It's all about you. All I care about is you. So if I'm mentoring you, I want to know everything about you. I want to know stuff around your past. I want to know what you're grateful for. I want to know your pains, your pleasures. I want to know who mentored you already. I want to know what your inner GPS system is, what's driving you. You know, I want to know what your talents, unfilled potential, blind spots are. I want to know how much presence you've got and how much you're in your head and out of your body. I want to know how much emotional intelligence you've got. And I want to know a bit about your future, like who are you now? How do you define yourself? Where do you want to be in 6 months to 10 months to 12 months time? How are you going to get there? How can you cultivate that pot of drivers and to lead you into an inspired vision that, you know, changes the world? And what's your mission? And the other thing to say about my mentorships that I think are different to a lot of others is, if you mentor with me for 6 months, for example, you will have a shift from leading your life through cognitive, rational thinking. And after 6 months, you'll be a better leader and a more aware decision maker because you'll have a deeper connection with your body. I mean, people talk about self-awareness a lot, don't they? And emotional intelligence. Well, mate, it ain't something you can develop by listening to a podcast. Emotional intelligence can't be learned from a book written by Daniel Goleman, even though it's a great book. It's got to involve some kind of embodied practice. If you want to access a deeper understanding of your own emotions and feel them so that you can have a more of a level playing field with who you're trying to support, and you can understand their emotions and make that deep connection of rapport and trust, so he can flourish and express because he trusts you. You've got to practice. You need an embodied practice, whether that involves cold water therapy or hot, or yoga or meditation or movement or dance or martial arts, or or mindful weight training or body scanning or touch or deep tissue work to kind of get you into your feelings, or grief therapy. I look at things in a very holistic, unique way in order for you to be able to tap into what you need, not what someone else needs, to develop your own level of self-awareness and emotional intelligence. Because we live in a culture, especially as men, that teaches us to live in our heads, and it's not enough. The wisdom, all that hidden potential, a new reality, it's inside our body. Now, the scientists might say, what are you talking about? But that's my experience. My experience of doing those practices metaphorically has led me into a place at the age of 50 where I'm much more comfortable in my skin than I was when I was 26. Because it's not all about reading and listening to podcasts.
As much as I would like to say that's not true. So, but for someone, obviously the main goal or the best outcome is to have a mentor like yourself. So pay for your time to help that along that journey. For the people out there who don't have the finance to be able to do that, don't feel it's right for them. And we talk, and like I said about Stephen Bartlett, you can have mentors that are out there who don't know. You've got the internet, you've got access to people, you've got access to resources. But that's a dangerous thing as well, because there's so much. And I've been there when it just becomes so overwhelmed. Or you go down a track with one particular person because you think that you can learn a lot from them, then I'm not sure they turned out to be the right kind of person I should be either aligned with or listening to as much as I do. What would be your advice for someone who's along that journey, doesn't have the finance to be able to have a mentor, but is looking for guidance elsewhere and probably feeling quite overwhelmed with how much is out there?
I might answer the way I'm going to answer this. It might surprise you. For me, whether you call it life or career or whatever, in this process of learning, and if a young Snc coach is wanting to learn, you can't avoid the pain. So if you end up going down the wrong track and going with the wrong type of information on Instagram, you might find out one day, and the pain of that, you might get more learning from that than if you had the perfect mentor. So I as long as you've got an infectious attitude to learn and never stop learning and just keep looking and keep looking and keep looking, you'll find your way. You really will find your way, and you're going to look in the wrong direction. It's a process. The other thing I want to say, though, Rob, is I get loads of messages from Snc coaches and other coaches, and sometimes a message it's a bit abstract. It's like, well, what are you actually asking for, mate? When a young lad, 19 years of age, confident, bit cocky, contacts me and leaves me a voicemail on LinkedIn asking for some of my time, which is precious, I'll give it to him, because I'm thinking, mate, you've just gone straight in. You've not sent me a boring CV. You've just gone straight in. Another guy who I employed after me in Wales, actually, Adam Beard. I had about 50 CVs for an Snc coach's job, and Adam sent me a keynote CV with an embedded video of him working with athletes. And it was like, whoa, you got the job, mate, So I think being confident and cocky and not worrying what others think it's so competitive out there, Rob, now. You've got to be like that. If not, you're going to be an intern for the rest of your life.
Adam's done all right for himself, hasn't he?
He's done all right, yeah.
He's done all right.
Yeah.
So, like I say, that I don't want to reiterate it, but there is, and like I say, I've been there, so overwhelmed with the amount of information. I think one thing that Snc coaches do well is this thirst for knowledge, and even to the point, like you, just feeling completely, not, I don't think you use the word burnt out, but burnt out with this pursuit of information. How difficult?
Sorry, can I say one really important thing?
Gosh, can.
Which is probably more in line with the specifics of your question anyway. So one thing I do notice, even with some of my clients, is like I'll get some clients coming to me, and they come to me because they've not got a job, or they've just been sacked, or they want a job, right? And one of the first, or they've come out of internship and they're kind of moving into a role, but you can't get the right role. One of the first things that they say to me is things like this: mate, I've got a degree, I've got a master's, I've got a PhD, you know, like, look at that fucking cunt, look at him, look at him, look at him, I'm better than him, I'm better than him. And the first thing I say to him is, all right, mate, you know that. Does the world know that? It's like, what do you mean? I said, well, are you on LinkedIn? No. Are you on Instagram? Do you give free videos? Do you speak? Do you go around to clubs? And the answer is always no. So whilst I do recommend that infectious quest to learn, learning for me is a combination of gathering knowledge and being seen, and stepping into that edge of being seen, which you and I know is like, oh God. I mean, only 6 or 7 years ago, I was working with a coach, and he said to me, you need a website with your name on. I was like, oh, no way. And then he said, you need a Facebook page. And then he said, you need to write blogs. And then he said, you need to put some photographs and write some text on. It's like, no chance. You need to do some videos. And whilst I can't say I love doing videos on Instagram, there's been a lot of growth in it for me, Rob, because I've got over myself, you know, get over yourself. And so I think Snc coaches, if they really want a job, as well as questing on that knowledge path, they've got to get over themselves and be seen. I'm glad I remembered that.
Yeah, I mean, I've been there with starting the podcast. I probably didn't listen back to myself for about 18 months, 2 years. And then it was like, oh, come on, just get over it. And you move on, and you do feel comfortable just doing it and putting yourself out there. And I think people are, because of the need to put themselves out there on Instagram or Twitter or LinkedIn, like you say. But I think it is still a big barrier for a lot of people to feel like I'm being judged by my peers. What are they going to think? Am I putting the right thing out? But I mean, I'm sure you'll echo this. Just start. Just do something. Do something and learn as you go. And there's a thing in the, I don't know if it's online space, about building public, like build a business in public. Just be open with, this month revenue went from this to this. We had this client, they left, this client, they came. And building in public is a fancy thing of just being open and honest about what you're doing. And I think you're accountable to yourself, you're accountable to others. And this openness builds a community, and people can relate to you rather than being this stiff.
And it builds confidence.
Of course, yeah.
But social media is not for everybody, is it, Rob?
Of course.
Now, if social media is not for you, and you want to get on the ladder of Snc, well, you need to make sure that you get a whiteboard, you do some research, you write down 100 people who are influencers who you want to meet, and go and meet them.
Get in your car. Yeah.
Go and meet them, you know.
In 2014, I was an Snc coach at a university, and I'd just started the podcast, and I'd got Dave Tenney on the podcast. He was at the Seattle Sounds at the time. Obviously,
Is he a medical guy, Dave?
Dave he was a high performance manager at Seattle Sounders, went to the Orlando Magic, and now he's with Austin in MLS. And we did a chat. I didn't know me from Adam, we had a chat for the podcast, and I got off the call with Dave, and we'd talk because they used to put a conference on in Seattle every year. And I said to him, I'm going to come to the conference next year. And that was a big thing because I couldn't really afford to go. Couldn't really afford the ticket to get into the conference, but went, and it was great. Like, you're meeting these people in person, and you've got to back yourself. You've got to put yourself out there and get in your car or get on the plane and go visit people. It's not going to come to you. No,
not at all. Not at all. But I do have sympathy though, Rob. It's tough. You know, when I was an Snc coaching, when I was an Snc coaching rugby, there wasn't many of us around, to be honest. And I was probably, looking back, the first Snc coach within rugby to use interns. You know, there was a year at Wasps and we had 4 interns, and none of the other teams had interns. But now even getting an intern position is tough.
Yeah. Even interns have got to have experience.
I know.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah.
I know. It's
how do you feel, where do you feel the industry's going on that front, with the expectation of the qualifications and the experience and, you know, wages and that type of thing? What's your feeling of the industry moving forwards?
Are you talking about the Snc industry?
Yeah.
Well, I'm out of it really, Rob, but I can give you what
Yeah.
I think. I'm not speaking from kind of up-to-date expert observation here. I mean, all the accreditation stuff, I mean, it's important, isn't it? But again, the problem is you've got to spend 20 grand on accreditation before you apply for an internship. But generally, that's what organisations are looking for. Now, you might get lucky and you apply to a club who've got a performance director like me, and I'd actually take on a guy without a degree if he shows me character traits like this. I'd take him on and just upskill him myself. So, yeah, on one hand, you know, all the safety and the legislation and all kind of that stuff, but it's just a money racket, isn't it? In relation to payments, I hope rugby Snc coaches and coaches don't ever get paid as much as American football coaches, because I think it'll affect the psychology of them. I think rugby staff up until now are still quite humble, and I do think because they're not getting paid millions and millions is part of that, the reason for that. I mean, look, you earn your stripes, you get paid a decent wage. Yeah, rugby's never going to be like football. I can only comment on rugby.
I did a couple of years working for Catapult, a GPS company, and with that, I had the luck of going around to a lot of clubs and seeing a lot of environments. And the one place, I know you're talking about rugby union here, but the one place or places that I love to go was Super League clubs. Super League clubs, because everyone was in one office. Porter cabin. I mean, I went to Cast Tigers. I mean, they were doing really well at the time. And it's just a little place, like you knock on the door. I knocked on the door and there was a guy answered. I didn't have a clue who was who. Do you want a cup of coffee? Yeah, grab a cup of coffee. And then we had a little look round, went to the gym, had a chat with the Snc coach. And I was like, who's that guy? He's the manager. He's the guy that got you a cup of coffee. I was like, how good is this? This is brilliant. It's such a great environment. And these guys won't be, you know, probably down the pay scale in terms of when you compare to union and football, but such a good environment. I absolutely loved it. Yeah.
And would it be a good environment if there was all on 3 million quid a year?
Yeah, well, yeah.
Probably not.
Yeah.
Money is a very, very interesting energy that affects psychology, especially if you've not got awareness. It really is an interesting phenomenon. When I was working for a national team, for about a year and a half, the kit man, it was miserable as fuck, you know, it was really miserable as fuck.
It's standard kit man.
What's wrong with him? Anyway, one day, it's like such a shift. It was amazing. His posture had changed, his demeanor had changed, he'd do anything for you. When we had a social, he'd bring his wife and all his kids. And I said to the manager, what's going on with him? He said, we've given him we've given him a pay rise of 10 grand. He's been asking for it for the last 6 years, because obviously before that, there was a gap between how much he was getting paid and how much he felt good enough and worthy enough.
Worth, yeah.
That gap's been filled, and he's happy as anything, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
He's expressing himself the way he can do because he's content.
Interesting. Right, mate. Well, if I know you put lots of stuff on LinkedIn, why did you decide LinkedIn was the place for your...
It's not really. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Instagram. I'm on LinkedIn. I think I'm on Facebook.
Yeah.
I've got Craig White mentoring.
There you go. Took the advice.
I've got Men Without Masks on Instagram. I've got my profile's not good on LinkedIn for anybody that wants to have a look at what I'm about.
Nice.
And the high performance me is on the website Craig White Mentoring, and the hippie me is on menwithoutmasks.com.
Yeah. And I went on your website, and there's a few not bad testimonials on there.
Yeah, there's some good ones.
It's like a who's who of rugby. Yeah.
Coming back to the word mentor, I mean, I didn't choose to be a mentor. It's just, I just look back at my career and people have said to me, you've mentored him. It's like, oh, really? Have I? And I just I'm blessed really, because I guess the natural talent of mentorship is something I express, but I didn't choose it.
Well, Craig, it's been an absolute pleasure to speak to you. I'm going to let you crack on and get on with your evening, but really appreciate it. It's like I said to you before we even press record. It's slightly different from the normal X's and O's, but I love it because we can get into the person. I think we've definitely done that with you. So
let's do another one soon. I mean, even if in the future you want to do something along the lines of the psychology. I don't like the word psychology, but the mental side of Snc.
Yeah.
Like that.
Yeah, 100%. Would love to. Right, mate, I'm going to let you go. Thanks very much. And look forward to catching you soon.
See you, mate.
Cheers, Craig.